Iraq cannot be considered in a vacuum, detached from the politics and the culture of both its region and the Muslim world. Using military force to disarm Saddam Hussein will bring change to Iraq and to the region. But we cannot foresee the nature of that change. What comes after Saddam Hussein? The uncertainties of a post-Saddam, post-conflict of Middle East should give us pause, encourage prudence, and enforce us to recognize the necessity of coalitions seeing it through. The conspicuous American occupation force in Iraq or in any Arab or Muslim country would only fuel anti-Americanism, nationalism, and resentment. By working through the United Nations, America will neutralize the accusations that a war in Iraq is anti-Muslim or driven by oil interests or American imperialism. America finds itself now in a dangerous and isolated position in the world. We are perceived as a nation at war with Muslims. This debilitating and dangerous perception must be reversed as the world seeks a new center of gravity for this new century. The United States must begin planning for a phased troop withdrawal from Iraq. The cost of combat in Iraq in terms of American lives, dollars, and world standing has been devastating for our country. The American people are demanding that we develop a bipartisan consensus for an honorable and responsible exit strategy from Iraq. If we fail to build a bipartisan foundation for an exit strategy, America will pay a high price for this blunder, one that we will have difficulty recovering from in the years ahead. Our actions today in the Congress begin this effort. Mr. President, I thank you and yield the floor. Mr. President, there will be no victory or defeat for the United States in Iraq. There will not be a military solution to Iraq. Iraq belongs to the 25 million Iraqis who live there. It doesn't belong to the United States. Iraq is not a prize to be won or lost. We can help the people of Iraq, as we have been helping them over the last 4 years with a tremendous amount of our American blood and treasure. We have much invested in Iraq. America has strategic interests in the Middle East, and we will continue to help the people of Iraq, as we will continue to protect our interests and those of our allies in the Middle East. But the future of Iraq, however, will be determined by the Iraqi people. We are now in our 5th year in an active war in Iraq. Iraq is more dangerous today than at any time in the last 4 years. And puzzling, as the administration says, we are making real progress in Iraq. So if we're making real progress in Iraq, then why are we putting more and more American combat troops into Iraq at the same time that our allies are leaving or have already left? The President's strategy is taking America deeper and deeper into this quagmire with no exit strategy. This strategy to deepen America's military involvement in Iraq will not bring a resolution in Iraq. It will only continue to undermine America's standing in Iraq and the Middle East, complicating and limiting our diplomatic options and doing further damage to our military. And we continue to finance and build the most powerful and unaccountable mercenary armies in history, like Blackwater. We cannot continue down a path that is destroying our military and continuing to place our men and women in uniform in Iraq in the middle of a civil war. It is now time for the Congress to step forward after a disastrous 4 years in Iraq. The language in the Senate supplemental bill does this in a responsible way. The Senate language, Mr. President, does not cut off funds. It does not impose a precipitous withdrawal of troops from Iraq. This language establishes a limited U.S. military mission in Iraq, counterterrorism, training Iraqi forces, and protecting U.S. personnel. That is not new, Mr. President. We have heard that from this administration over the last 4 years. This wasn't dreamed up. And this idea that somehow you don't support the troops if you don't continue in a lemming-like way to accept whatever this administration's policy is, that's what's wrong. That is what's wrong. And that is dangerous. This language establishes a limited U.S. military mission in Iraq that focuses on the things that we should be doing, we can be doing. This new and responsible mission would pull our troops out of the middle of Iraq's civil war. Is that wrong? Is there something wrong with that? Asking these young men and women to put their lives on the line in the middle of a civil war in Baghdad, kicking down doors with a bullseye on their back, to pull them out of that, is that wrong? Does that somehow display a cavalier attitude toward the support of our troops? I think not, Mr. President. I think just the opposite. There is a timeline in the Senate language, but it does not establish a binding date for U.S. withdrawal from Iraq. Now, let's get that clear. It would establish the goal. Those are the terms, Mr. President, goal. A goal that U.S. forces not involved in this more limited military mission be redeployed by March of 2008. Is there something wrong with that? That means March of 2008 is 5 years that we have been there. 5 years. We will have done significant damage to our Marines and our Army and our National Guard by then. Mr. President, we have misunderstood, misread, misplanned, and mismanaged our honorable intentions in Iraq with an arrogant self-delusion reminiscent of Vietnam. Honorable intentions are not policies or plans or responsible. It may take many years before there is a cohesive political center in Iraq. America's options on this point have always been limited. I support the President's decision to initiate a new diplomatic strategy and support a regional diplomatic process on the future of Iraq. That began on March 10th at the Regional Security Conference in Baghdad. But the President must devote his attention to foster those efforts